I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
And I'm Trent Jones.
And today on the Music and Ideas podcast, we're going to talk about blues. I'm a little worried about it.
Why are you worried?
If blues is a tree, it is like a banyan tree of a trunk. Like there's so many. The trunk has branches.
Yeah.
Before you go talk about stuff influenced by blues, which is just almost everything since, 1950 almost, or maybe even 1920. Before you even talk about everything that's influenced, blues is great big. We did a show on bluegrass the other day, and that's really clean to chase that lineage. And it's about, blues is a little bit older, but not much. But, that trunk is that's a Doug fir. That trunk is straight, and it's 50 feet to the first branch, This thing is it's like a banyan tree. It's tough. And like heavy metal, the fans are rabid. They know more about it than we do, and they see it in greater resolution than I ever possibly could. So we're going to make most people mad here.
Preemptive apologies.
Nope. No apology. We're just going to do it. And but it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I'm a little scared because I'm supposed to know all the blues lore as a guitar player, and I don't know. Maybe I'll make a hack job out of it, but that's what we're here for. We're not here to give you a lecture. We ain't scholars or nothing. We're just here to talk music.
The technical term is amateurs.
Dilettantes.
Amateur means, I like the word amateur better. I'm not sure what dilettante means, but amateur means someone who loves it. So this is three guys who love music. And this is for both podcasts that we do at Online Great Books. There's a hesitance of a lot of people to dive into something because they don't have permission from the expert. What am I supposed to think about this? And so they'll stop. They won't read Shakespeare. They won't listen to classical music. Heck, they won't even listen to the blues because they want to make sure they get it. I don't know. They're waiting for the blues documentary to come out so they can get their playlist and know what to think about it.
Yeah.
Who's the guy that did the Civil War thing? He did the jazz documentary and the country music
Ken
one.
Burns.
Yeah.
Yeah, until Ken Burns does something on the blues, I don't know what to listen to.
Right.
Well, hell with that. Just go listen to it.
Which can there be any genre more? Could that sentiment be more antithetical to the blues? I mean, if we're going to pick any genre where there's the idea of purity is just thrown completely out the window, or authenticity, I don't think these blues players thought in those terms whatsoever. I don't think they were precious about anything in the form of music.
No, it's among the folkiest of folk musics.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. If there's any music that's still around, that's vernacular, it's probably this.
Yeah, it struck me as I put together this playlist for us, and I've struggled with putting it together. I'm like, well, we got to have a little bit of this because you got to see where the blues goes here, and then we need a little bit of rockabilly, and it's like, well, we probably need to talk about early rock and roll just to see where that goes. And if you're not careful, all of a sudden you end up with 85 tracks to listen to, and you're still not really hitting all the branches. So what I try to do is focus on maybe where blues comes from, kind of, sort of, but even there, we're going to miss a lot of stuff in the process. So, bear with us. But I think one of the things that's difficult and unique about this genre compared to the other ones we've done so far is that it is so tightly interwoven to our musical vocabulary today that it's almost impossible to see it from a third-party perspective and trace all of the lineages. It's just not clean enough, like you said, Scott. So we're just going to do the best we can.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of people at Online Great Books reading Herodotus, the histories. And one of the things that is really interesting about reading that is it brings up questions about what is history? How do you know what happened? And the truth of it is we really don't know what happened, and you try to start to figure out, what is history and how do you write it? Historiography, how do you write it? And this show has kind of turned into a narrative history of some of these genres, right? So we tell, like the bluegrass show, we kind of told a story about where bluegrass came from and how it developed, and that's just one way to tell it. You end up missing. In telling that story, I end up missing details. But the human mind, though, that's how it knows things, is through story. We can't tabulate stuff in a SQL database in our mind. We don't know spreadsheets. We tell ourselves stories so that we can know. And we're gonna. I suspect that we're gonna try to tell a story here, and it's just inadequate to the task. But what else are you gonna do? Right?
That's right.
Like if you became an expert on any one of these kinds of music, you would just know more of the stories. Right? You could tell the Blind Lemon Jefferson story from beginning to end, the W.C. Handy story from beginning to end, and you would just know more of the stories and then start to see how those stories intertwine. And it's hard to do that in a 2-hour podcast, Anyway. But we got some reviews. I thought I would read 2 of these. Listen to this crap. User Malarkey Donnie gives us 5 stars. And the title of this review is, I Love Karl.
What?
Yeah. It says, I love Karl. Great podcast. I share it and OGB with everyone. The only podcast I listen to at normal speed. Like, on the face, that's a great review. And thank you, Malarkey Donnie. But what about Trent? Like, nobody likes me. I'm used to that. But what about Trent?
I can take it.
Yeah, I don't get it. I'm like coffee with chicory. You either love it or hate me, which is fine.
Is Karl the beignet?
Oh my gosh.
Here's another one from Maluti 2785. America's dads teach you about music. He gives us 5 stars. He says, these guys are great. They pick the right tunes. Turn off stuff you should know and listen to this. Nice. So we've had a number of those. I'll just read it. Those are just the 2 newest ones. And thank you guys for leaving those reviews. They seem to help. Here's one from Oilfield Book Nerd. That's the kind of user I want. Yeah, I like that. Trent, where do we start? If it's the blues, what's the first track that a guy plays when he's trying to tell the story of the blues in 2 hours?
All right. Well, I'm going to take a shot here, and y'all can get your pitchforks and come after me later. One of the things that is difficult about this genre is, I think, the really early stuff where we would be able to cleanly draw lines of kind of how the blues of the 20s that we're going to get to in a second comes from, is we don't really have recordings of it. This really early stuff is just, it was there, and there's just no recordings of it until really the 20s. So we're going to have to kind of just, bounce our way into that era, and then once we finally have some recorded music to listen to, we'll go after that. But here's what I found that was interesting to me. I did not know this at all. There was an important type of music in the West Indies, particularly the sugar trade, but really just any of the work that was happening on the plantations and on the merchant vessels sailing between, the Gulf of Mexico and all of the European-owned islands in the Caribbean and West Africa. And these plantations and the slaves primarily who worked them had work songs. And this served a really important function in their work and their society. So basically, in these groups, you would have a song leader, if you will. And they would sing a work song to set the tone and the pace of the work that's being done. And they had all sorts of work songs, right? We had work songs about, if you're going to go chop wood, there's a chopping song. And you got a guy in the group who's going to sing a song and pace the work of the people chopping wood. This also happened on the ships that were trading goods back and forth between Europe and West Africa and the new states. If you're rigging up a sail, there's a rigging up a sail song.
Well, why would you need a song? So I'm trying to think of this.
Yeah.
You'd all need to chop at the same time if you're chopping one big log, or so that you're not interfering with each other's work, or you all have to haul on the rope at the same time.
Well, I can see on a ship, I mean, haven't sailed on a ship, but I can see how it'd be pretty useful if you're all pulling on the rope at the same time. There's a lot of manpower involved in operating that ship. Remember, this is pre-steam powered ships. Everything that happened on the ship was done under the power of the wind and the power of human muscles. So coordination is really important.
So there's a connection. We were talking about this on Tuesday with the Republic seminar that I was leading, about how music is, why do you need the Guardians to study music in the Republic? Well, you need them to study music because music, this is what Socrates says, music brings harmony in the soul. It makes the soul be a certain way. So there are different kind of music that even that Socrates would talk about. If you're going to war, you need a certain kind of song. If you're going to do other things, you need a certain kind of song because the song has an effect on you. So if you're going to work on a sailing ship, you need a sea shanty or something to help you do the work.
That's right. In fact, so we've got a couple of different influences here. We've got the plantation songs that for plantation work, farming, harvesting, chopping things, just doing all sorts of handwork. But you've also got the sea songs. And from what I was able to uncover, a lot of these are of Scottish and Irish origin because those are the folks who would be manning these vessels, hauling goods back and forth between all of the ports in the areas I just mentioned. And they had sea shanties. Same kind of stuff, served the same purpose, but a little bit different. And so I think we're going to listen to a couple of these. The sea shanty was led by the shantyman, who is basically the leader of the crew doing the work. I hear these as a little bit more melodic. We're also going to listen to some Cuban and Dominican old plantation songs that are a little bit more focused on the call and response, a little bit less melodic, a little bit more rhythmic in nature. But you can hear kind of two sides of the influence that eventually will head up to the Gulf ports and into the southern states where the blues that we're more familiar with comes from. So let's take a crack at some of these sea shanties.
So Trent's thesis here is that these slaves, you and I were talking about this on the phone.
Yeah.
His thesis is that you have these slaves from Africa on these ships. You've got the Scotch, Irish sailors mostly, right?
Yeah.
Manning the ships. And on the ship is where that milieu starts, right? Between the African...
I don't know that. I don't know that specifically. I think that at some point slaves come over to work the plantation. I think mainly the sugar and cotton plantations. I think at this time, mid 1800s, early 1800s, we're talking about sugar plantations primarily.
Right.
In Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, all these, what is now modern day. And they had work songs that they brought from their home culture. I think you also have the Scots-Irish sailors who were manning the merchant ships. Now, one type of ship that emerged in this trade route is what they call the packet ship. And these packet ships were essentially profit maximizing vessels. So they were ways to figure out how do we make a ship where we can pack it full of as much cargo as possible and use as little crew as possible. And that's where these sea shanties come from, is these packet ships, because you needed a crew that was efficient in order to get all the work done and, have more margin at the end of the day when you trade the goods. So I think they were running into each other at port, probably.
Well,
I don't find this to be out of bounds. That I had read something a while back about language in the Caribbean that, I don't know how to pronounce this word, pidgin, P-I-D-G-I-N.
you're right. It's pigeon.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a made-up language that didn't really exist before. You'd have a bunch of people with different languages being forced together by by being compelled to be slaves or being on the ships or whatever. None of them speak each other's language in that first generation.
Mm.
In the second generation, the kids all speak the same language, which is not the same language that the grown-ups did.
Yeah.
So you get
Patois.
new things popping out of a whole lot of people being put together in a difficult situation.
Yeah. And I think at port, you have to imagine, when you get to Mobile, Alabama, you hear these, the crews of like the slaves coming over, they've got their songs. You've got the sailors singing their songs. You've got the native Southerners singing their songs, and there's got to be some bleed over that occurs in this process.
Yeah, Mobile, of course, New Orleans, maybe even Galveston are Caribbean ports at that point, right? It's hard to think of it that way. You can still see it. If you go to New Orleans, you can still see it. There are palm trees there. You can go to the French Quarter. You can walk to the levee. You can see where the docks used to be. It was a Caribbean port. But let's listen to Santiano. Is that the one you want to play first?
Yeah. So this would be a sea shanty from, of Scottish origin, I believe.
Yeah, I like this one. Here we go.
When I was a young lad in my prime, way, hey, Santiano, I went to sea in the summertime, all on the plains of Mexico. Why do them other girls love me so? Way, hey, Santiano, because I don't tell them all I know, all on the plains of Mexico. When I was a young lad in my prime, way, hey, Santiano, I knocked down them yellow girls two at a time, all on the plains of Mexico.
I love it.
So we've actually got a lot more blues than you might think at first blush happening in this song. What the most obvious thing is we've got a call and response format, right? We've got the shanty man and we've got the rest of the crew answering his call. He's telling a story about this ship called the Santiana sailing to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard it. Yeah. So the call and response format we'll hear in all forms of the blues. Eventually it's going to be instrumental and not vocal in nature. But we've set that up. We've also got, this is kind of characteristic of the blues, is boasts of sexual prowess. He knocked down the girls two at a time.
Right.
Right. Okay, so that's going to be a recurring theme as well. Now, I find that these sea shanties are a little bit more melodic in nature. We don't quite have that kind of hypnotizing drone. They actually have melodies that move up and down. Let's contrast that with some of the plantation songs I put on here. I think there's one from Cuba and one from the Dominican Republic. It's difficult to find examples of these because, again, most of these are lost to history. These are the best recreations we have.
Yeah, you can imagine if you had recording equipment, like the first recording equipment, like space age technology, essentially, like cutting edge technology.
Yeah.
The priority for recording wouldn't have been this stuff, right? Until Alan Lomax works for the Smithsonian and frankly, FDR's bloated government was willing to pay for him to drive around and record folk songs. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is lost. But here's a song that I cannot pronounce. The English translation of it is "The Spirit is Circling the Sugar Mill" from the album Havana and Matanzas, Cuba. This is from 1957. What's the meter here? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. What is it?
I think it's a polyrhythm. The shovel or whatever it is counting one thing, and there's drums in the background.
Yeah,
playing a steady beat.
It's 4 minutes and 39 seconds of this.
So, I don't know about y'all, but what I'm hearing there is something that's a little bit more of a drone. It's a little bit more hypnotic. I don't know if it's narrative in nature because I don't understand the language, but you hear that call and response format, And this one you can actually hear. I don't know if those are actual like work implements, if it's a shovel or pickaxe of some kind or whatever, some sort of farming implement. But you can see how the tools of the day were incorporated into the song, right? So you can hear the work element of the song in the beat.
Yeah, and that Afro-Cuban polyrhythm stuff. That you definitely don't hear that in the Santillano.
Right.
So I don't know. So here's the problem, right? Where does this song fit in the family tree? I don't know. But this is a sample of what a field song might have been or a work song might have been. It's definitely got this Caribbean, African influence in it, and it has this polyrhythm. So when does that become the swinging eighth note? When does that turn into what we recognize as blues rhythm?
One thing I noticed in listening to this 35-track playlist
It's 45. Thank you. I just looked.
is that rhythm is on some of this stuff. It's up for grabs. When I'm looking at a song or when I'm trying to write a song, I'm thinking, what's the rhythm? What's the meter? And everything's got to fit in that meter. And so say it's a 4/4 song, that means I'm probably going to have 8 measures of one thing, 8 measures of another thing, or I might have 12 measures, but it's going to be some multiple of 4, and it's going to be strict. And you're always going to know where you are in the song, and if there are drums, the drums are going to help you find it. But listening to a bunch of this stuff, this particular one, I think the John Lee Hooker, Boogie Chillin' song, a bunch of these things the rhythm it's whatever I want it to be. Robert Johnson was like this. And we talked about this on the Jimmy Rogers show. Jimmy Rogers does it just like Robert Johnson does, which is he makes the rhythm go wherever he wants it to. And I think that's a characteristic that you see in the early blues.
Swing is important, but not yet, right? I think it becomes important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Maybe swing is the difference between play and work.
Mm.
Like swing has got a little bit of, you just think about it.
Yeah.
It feels like a dance.
Yeah.
This stuff feels like work.
Yeah.
Or it also, it can, when they're telling a story, what was the story about Tojo and Hitler?
Yeah.
One of these was
right.
an interesting track. If I'm telling a story and I'm accompanying it with my guitar, I'm more like Homer telling a story, and I'm going to play something on the guitar whenever it fits in, and it doesn't matter quite as much because you're not doing a foxtrot to it. I don't need to keep hitting the rhythm as strictly. I don't know. I remember watching Ray Wiley Hubbard. He does the same kind of thing. It's just whenever he wants to.
Yeah.
When he's singing about the snake farm.
Yeah. Let's go listen to this chopping song from the Dominican Republic. This is my favorite of the work songs that we have on the list here. Call and response. It's all there.
Is that a bark?
So this is from the Dominican Republic. So these people had their field songs, and then here in what became the United States, there were slaves, of course, and they had field songs. Mm-hmm. It was hard for them to have any other kind of songs. Where would they have played it? What kind of instruments would they have had? Nothing. And nowhere to play. Certain plantations, maybe they would have been granted the right to do this and in the space to, entertain themselves on a Sunday or something.
Well, they might have sung in church.
And they might have sung in church. They would have been, yep, that's right.
So the gospel music is a branch of this tree or a root of this tree.
I would say so.
It's somewhere in there too. I was thinking about this. if you're going to chant psalms in a church service, there's also the call and response. The whole book of Psalms is one verse and then a verse that will restate it with slightly different words.
Yeah.
Which I see in the blues too.
And you have the song leader that leads you through the song. Yeah, absolutely. We'll see the gospel return in once we get into the Delta blues of Mississippi. It's kind of one of the topics that you would sing about, right? Is basically old gospel songs.
Can I add a parenthesis? So we're talking about this, dear listeners. So the way music gets transmitted now is a whole lot different than back then. So now, if I'm a young guy playing guitar, I just go on YouTube and find 1,000 different guitar players and pick the one I like and be influenced by that person. And there's no geographical boundaries. I don't need to know him or anything. And we've mentioned how this is before recorded music. So how would you learn a new song? Well, the guy who sang it would come to where you live, and you would learn it by hearing it through your ear holes. And,
Show me how to play that.
It's on the one hand, it's hard to trace out, but it's also, I don't know, it's kind of organic. You know, it grows out of the soil that it's in. And to listen to this sort of stuff, at least the very early stuff, it's like doing archaeology.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that musicians, one universal, regardless of the culture they come from, I think musicians have honed their ears and are a little bit more perceptive than the rest of the population. And so musicians are always listening for interesting sounds.
They're thieves.
Yeah.
Thieves, yes, absolutely. And so you hear someone come from, maybe it's a missionary bringing the gospel with strange songs from their home culture and a strange way of singing them and strange meter. But I think musicians are just naturally drawn to interesting, unique sounds. And as soon as you hear it, you're like, whoa, what is that? I got to know how to play that. And you'll never really be able to do it in the way that the person who brought the music to you performed it. So you do it, you kind of filter it through your own experience and your own instruments and your own ability and your own culture. So yeah, we get this jambalaya or gumbo of music here.
Gumbo.
In New Orleans was a very liberal place. And this may not sound like it to us now, but it was. In 1724, I had to go look this stuff up because I remembered it from having spent a lot of time down there. In 1724, our government there passed what they called the Code Noir, the Black Code. And it gave all of the slaves in that area Sunday off. So in 1724, they only had to work, they gave them the Sabbath off. But they weren't given a place to go. And so there were some gatherings here and there and whatever. But in the beginning of the beginning of the 1800s, Congo Square began to be kind of the main gathering place in that Tremé neighborhood of New Orleans. It's across Rampart. There were walls around the French Quarter, and one of the streets ran along one of those walls, Rampart, and it's across Rampart, and there are accounts of 500-600 slaves on Sundays going out there to Congo Square to dance. Right after the Haitian Revolution, first part of the 1800s, huge influx of Haitians and Haitian Creole people, and that music became, from what I understand, more Caribbean at that point. I think that Congo Square and the music there is probably pretty important. This morning, when I was digging around, I found a piece called Bamboula, Bamboula, by Louis Moreau Gottschalk, might be Haitian, where he supposedly was able to dig up some of the rhythms and some of the things that were played in Congo Square and incorporated it into this piece. It's piano. I don't know how much of this we need to play, but supposedly this is influenced by things he heard there. A little weird Creole, classical, Congo square influence stuff. You might go listen to that if you care, guys. Congo Square is on the wrong side of the street, right? It's not in the French Quarter. It's across the street. It's across Rampart. We know about the Basin Street Blues. There was an area, the red light district. That's where the whores were. That's where the gambling was. It's where if there was an opium den, it was over there. Yeah. Poor freedmen. And a lot of this cropped up there. And we know, because there are interviews and contemporary accounts of Louis Armstrong coming out of that. And jazz comes out of that. But this blues is baking in there too. And of course in the Mississippi Delta too. Now, what's the next thing to play? Like, what do we do here? I don't know.
Yeah, at some point, like we're going to get to the Delta blues there, and it's a little bit more. We'll be on a little bit more solid ground. But I think you could point at a few different things. I wanted to take a look at the word blues itself. So we've kind of laid down a little bit of a cultural or like a backstory to this stuff. But why do we call it the blues? What does that even mean?
I was having fun. I dug on the Oxford English Dictionary, which is a membership perk at onlinegreatbooks.com that you get to play around with. The OED is the dictionary of the English language. It's the official one, I suppose, if there is an official one, and it's got etymologies. So I looked up the blues, and there's a couple of definitions. Feelings of melancholy, sadness, depression, and that goes back to 1741. I'm far from being quite well, though not troubled with the blues as I have been. That's a guy in England, I guess, in 1741 writing about the blues. But it had a reference to the Blue Devils, and I thought that was interesting. Wanted to look that up. The Blue Devil is a harmful or malignant demon, especially one that causes melancholy. And there's a quote from 1616. Alston, whose life hath been accounted evil, and therefore called by many the Blue Devil, struck with remorse of his ill-gotten pelf, would in despair have made away with himself. 1616, they're talking about the blues in England. So there's that. Then, well, we've been talking about the blues a lot, and we don't really know what it is. So the blues as a feeling of melancholy, we have that going back to the 17th century. Blues as a style of music, this is what the OED says, and nothing that we've listened to so far fits it. A melancholic style of music typically centering on a 12-bar sequence based upon a standard harmonic progression and having any number of distinguishing characteristics intended to express the performer's melancholy, such as the use of blue notes. We'll have to talk about that. A vocal style featuring rasping, growling, or bending or sliding of notes and certain recurring lyrical themes and structures. All right, so that's what the OED thinks a blues is. It's the 12-bar song form that has blue notes in it. We haven't had any 12-bar song forms yet.
Not yet.
We had maybe some blue notes. So we're not yet to the point where we're at the dictionary definition of the blues.
Yeah.
Now, if you go down and see in the Oxford English Dictionary for the entry on blues music, there's a song called, which is the first song name with blues in it, by Hart Wand, called Dallas Blues. I looked for this song, and I found a new rendition by a lady named Sue Keller. Who cares? Sorry, Sue. The next one is from 1912. It's W.C. Handy, Memphis Blues. I think listening to W.C. Handy for just a minute is... We should do that here. Yeah. 1912, W.C. Handy... trumpet player, band leader, wrote a lot of stuff, and Dixieland or ragtime influence, right? We're not hearing the 12-bar blues here yet, but we're hearing a blues scale.
There's a little bit in there, but then it has like alternate sections where it changes.
There was a 16-bar blues that was very popular early, and I think there was a format war like Beta and VHS or something.
Right.
Like Sweet Georgia Brown is a 16-bar blues. We kind of all know that one. And there are other 16-bar blues, and it was more popular earlier, and later on that 12-bar one, Blues Forum won out. So I didn't sit down with a pencil here and figure out what the heck is going on here, but it's a standard format that you're going to hear in ragtime or Dixieland that eventually gets supplanted by 12-bar blues. That's W.C. Handy. You should go listen to a bunch of him if you care about this stuff. We're gonna have to do a show about band music, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, okay.
Sousa, the American turn of the century band.
Yeah, kind of Tin Pan Alley stuff.
Because
I mean, just like your local community would have a bunch of brass players getting together.
Yeah, in almost every Western, they have a scene where like the governor comes into the new territory or whatever, and they have some weak ass band that meets him at the train station and plays, whatever. That's band music. You got a tuba and got a baritone and trumpets, and that's band music. And a lot of the instrumentation, this W.C. Handy stuff, is band instrumentation. Right? You got the tuba, you got trombones, you got the brass stuff, and I like it.
Yeah, let's listen to just the very opening strain. This is a really early it's really a ragtime piece. But if we listen to just the opening strain before the piece really gets started, you can hear just a little bit of blues in there. This is a really early one that uses the word blues in the title, I Got the Blues. This is by Anthony Maggio, 1908.
Oh, boy.
And we can just listen to like the first few seconds of it.
Okay, Anthony Maggio. This is interesting. The guy has sort of an Italian surname, If you're ever in New Orleans, go get the muffaletta sandwich at the Central Grocery.
Ooh.
It's been there for,
Really?
I don't know, 100 years or something. There's a strong Italian community down there that makes delicious sandwiches and delicious seafood, and they're strong down there. First blues ever. I Got the Blues by Anthony Maggio, 1908, a blues piano. Let's hear it.
Here is now a ragtime piece. Okay. So let's go back and listen to it one more time so we can hear it again. Just that opening strain, as they call it.
Now, I don't know if you guys can tell, dear listener. This is really not him. This is somebody playing from the sheet music. Because in 1908, we didn't have a recording.
That's right. Okay. What do we hear there? We hear some blues notes. It's been a few days since I looked at the sheet music, but I think we have a flat 7 there. And we hear that kind of grinding in the chord from the flat 7. And that's one of our blues notes. That's one of the 3 that will eventually form the hexatonic blues scale as we get in there. So
that's some nerdy crap.
Yeah.
A 6-tone scale that has what? 1, I'm going to screw this up. 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are our blues notes.
That is not do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And it's one of the reasons why when you pick up guitar, you just immediately start trying to play blues because the note choices are more limited than they are in most other styles. Well, let's listen. Yeah. I'm going to slow this down to 1/4 speed. And do you want to call out the blue notes as we hear them? Maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm going to crank this up a little bit. We're at the volume. Okay, I lied. I'm going to play this at half speed, and we'll see if we can call out some of these blue notes.
There we go. So right there, we heard in that statement. Okay. That's the flat 7 right there, right? But that's the note you're listening for there. It's a little grindy.
That's probably a C7 chord. So if you play the C scale, the normal C scale sounds like this. the blues scale is. So the notes that are different are this one. Okay, so the E flat. So we have the C major, and then that note, and the B flat are note. Those I think would be the blue notes. Would be this B flat, this flat fifth, and the flat third. And if you play them against a C major chord, they all sound cool. So hold on. So they're not the notes that you would expect in the harmony. They're a little bit different. One more note on that note. See what I did there? The B flat against the E of the C major chord is the devil's interval.
Again.
We heard about that.
Yep.
The tritone.
So there's a grind built into the blues scale.
So the flat 3, the flat 5, the flat 7. Now the flat 3 is what makes a minor chord. So you end up playing a quasi-minor solo over a major key in a lot of blues. There are a lot of minor blues too, Stormy Monday. And then you have that flat 7. Even if you don't know what a musical instrument is and you've never played a note, the dummy at the end of the Happy Birthday song that says, and many more, that last note is the flat 7. That's where that tension is. It's that flat 7. And then you got to have the flat 5 in there because you got to build the devil's interval. You got to have it so you can get that chewing tinfoil thing when you need it. It's a weird thing, the blues scale.
Well, I think having the grind to it, the dissonance that's built into it. So like the Oxford English Dictionary said, it's a melancholic style of music. It's supposed to have a feeling to it of sadness, I guess, of loss, of, I'm never going to get out of this situation. What am I going to do? It's that kind of feeling that's built into the music and the way it's done. The regular major scale doesn't have that much pathos to it.
Yeah. A lot of people refer to the major scale as it's kind of a default happy sound, versus it kind of has a little cloud over it, hanging over it. Interestingly, I believe this was on Wikipedia, so I didn't follow up on the sources of this, but blues also referred at one point to overindulging in alcohol. So blues was also tied to,
I've had a blue year, man.
Sinfulness, right? And it makes sense to me because we'll talk about this more as we go on, but there's this religious element here. Much as we had a mixing of cultures in the sea shanties and the work songs, we're also going to have a mixing of religions here between the West African sort of totemic, I guess, religions of voodoo mixed in with the Christian songbook. And so there's that kind of makes itself present in the music as well, right? So we have this devil's interval. There's a tension there that is everything fits together. It's actually a very, very unified kind of art form when you think of it in those terms. Culturally, it makes sense. Thematically, it makes sense. Musically, it makes sense.
Well, it's a very cool style and family of music that grew out of unfortunate situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
A tribute to what the human spirit can do. Make lemonade, I guess.
Well, Scott, where do we go from here? Do we go to the Delta? Are we in
I don't
the
know.
US
If you
yet?
want the 12 bar, I thought that Hesitation Blues was, I think that Jelly Roll Morton, that sounded to me just like what we always think about in jazz, at least for the blues form.
Yeah, let's listen to a little Jelly Roll Morton. We're going to skip over, because we're already like 49 minutes in. We're going to have to skip a little, a lot of things. We had a Louis Armstrong tune on the list. We're going to skip it. It's worth listening to Dallas Blues. You get to hear his vocals. I think that his vocals are pretty important in the formation of the blues, but we'll have to leave that for another show. We'll have to do a Louis Armstrong show. Let's go listen to Hesitation Blues by Jelly Roll Morton. What's a jelly roll?
Oh, I don't know.
I have no idea.
Well, it is, in this context, female genitalia.
I did not know that.
Yes.
What's Jelly Roll Morton's real name? Wasn't it like Louis Ferdinand or something?
Ferdinand Joseph Lamotte. Yeah, Jelly Roll. Yeah, that's, from what I understand, is slang. Let's listen to Hesitation Blues.
Long time people thought I wrote this tune. I used to sell them just a little bit of lead copies for 35 cents there. I kept the sheet music so nobody could see it.
All right, so that's the end of the 12.
Yep.
If I was whiskey, you were the duck. I dive to the bottom and I never come up. Oh, how long do I have to wait? Can I get it now? Do I have to hesitate?
So much innuendo everywhere.
If I had a woman, she was tall. She made me think about my parasol. Oh, how long
No idea what
do
that
I
meant.
have to wait? Can I get it now? Do I have to hesitate?
All right, so that's, I wonder if Trent can help here.
I love that.
Whatever key that was in. But so you heard that there's 12 bars, and the first 4 is generally based around the 1 in the harmony. And then,
Yep.
then you go up to the 4 for the second 4, at least for the first 2 of the second 4. And then for the third 4, you go up to the 5, and then typically down to the 4, and then back to the 1.
Yep. That's right. Yep. And so we have maybe the most common chord progression in the history of recorded music, the 1-4-5, as you just described. And just to remind folks, we've covered this a few times in the podcast before, but Karl's referring to the chords that you would play within the scale. So the 1 is the tonic. That's the first note in the key. So I don't know what key that was in off the top of my head. I don't have perfect pitch like your daughters, but if we did it in A, for instance, it's common blues key.
A is a guitar key.
Or guitar key, right? A would be our tonic. That'd be our 1 chord, would be the A chord. So here's something you've all heard before. Okay, there's our 1 chord. There's our 4 chord. 5 chord. Back to the 4 chord. Back to the 1. And a turn. And so that's one of the most common chord progressions that we encounter. 1-4-5, 4-5, 1-4-1-4-5. There's all sorts of combinations you can do, but those 3 chords make up thousands of popular songs.
Yeah, and it's also, frankly, it's the heart of rock and roll. It's the heart of country music. It's the heart of most pop music is the 1, 4, and 5 and going between them. If you're ever in doubt, I mean, that's what they say, 3 chords and the truth. Those are the 3 chords.
Yep.
Yeah,
And that goes back to the blues.
that's right.
Yeah, if you ever grip a guitar neck and learn a few chords, you'll see that 1-4-5 just makes like what is the word that we use when we talk about working in a comfortable way so we don't get injured? Ergonomic.
That's right. Yeah, it fits the hand quite nicely.
Yeah.
A guitar is a lot about shapes. You make a certain shape on the guitar and you just move it around to make each chord. So,
I want to talk about this Jelly Roll thing some more.
yeah.
This innuendo.
Is that preoccupying?
This innuendo and this bravado is very important in blues. we did our show about Jimmy Rogers, and he has this bravado about what he does with the women. He's going to shoot them down. He's not killing any women. We talked about that. Go back and listen to episode 5. The innuendo is part of the fun and part of the allure here, and it's pervasive. This guy's name is Jelly Roll Morton. Okay, so I just looked up Jelly Roll on the Oxford English Dictionary. You got to have the Oxford English Dictionary, by the way, guys. You go to onlinegreatbooks.com and you sign up. We don't just send you real live books that you can hold. We don't just give you seminars. You also get this thing it's $100 a year to go get the subscription yourself. 1914, W.C. Handy, St. Louis Blues. I'm most wild about my Jelly Roll, he says. Sonny Boy Williamson, 1919, I ain't going to give nobody none of this Jelly Roll. So these are these first instances of use of this. It is a United States usage, meaning either a cylindrical cake containing jelly or jam, or a lover, or sexual intercourse, or the female genitalia. So in 1927, the Journal of Abnormal and Social Psychology says, by far the most common of these terms is jelly roll, as used by the lower class Negro. It stands for vagina or the female genitalia in general, and sometimes for sexual intercourse. These people are, it's so funny. So later on, we're going to hear Muddy Waters, and he's going to sing about Hoochie Coochie Man. What's that mean?
Yeah.
Right? It's more the same. And he talks about having some voodoo totems. Right? He's got a mojo hand. He's got a John the Conqueror and this John the Conqueror root. So I had to look up that. I mean, I knew that John the Conqueror was a root. It's kind of like related to like a sweet potato, and they would put it in like a mojo bag, right? You wear it on a string around your neck or whatever. And you can use it to put a haint on somebody. You can use it to, curse somebody or whatever. It's good luck in gambling, but it also has some significance for your potency. So this stuff is super important in this tradition. It's so weird and interesting.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about. So this originates is somewhere in West Africa. I think in the modern day country that lays claim to the hoodoo, or sometimes we call it voodoo, religion is Benin. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a West African nation, and so it's witchcraft, right? And so you would go to a witch doctor of some sort to have a mojo hand or a mojo bag made for you, and they actually serve different purposes. There's different kinds of mojo bags, and apparently an experienced witch doctor would kind of use the right ingredients for the purpose, right? So there was a red bag for sexual potency. There is a white bag for the health of family. There's a green bag for luck and gambling.
It's so crazy.
And so, this stuff really is integral. So why don't we use this as a jumping off point to talk about what probably most people think about when they think about the blues, and let's move up the mighty Mississippi to the Delta.
Okay.
Because you could spend hours just here.
Yeah, hours. We're going to skip Black Snake Moan by Blind Lemon Jefferson.
I wonder, never mind.
Just listen to the end of the song, and you'll figure out what it's about.
Do we want to go straight to Crossroad Blues, Take One, Robert Johnson from his RCA Complete Recordings? Let's go listen.
About Robert Johnson.
This guy brings it all to his fruition. It's in the full expression of blues at this point, and anything else is just icing on an already pretty tasty cake, I think. Robert Johnson and his extra hands and fingers.
I went to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. I went to the crossroads, fell down on my knees.
you know me, baby, everybody pass me by. Stand at the crossroad, baby, ride the sun going down.
So this is I'm going from memory. I think it's 1927.
That's about right.
I think
Yep, late 20s.
So we've heard some Jelly Roll Morton. We heard some W.C. Handy. We've heard some Jimmy Rogers. These guys are contemporary. I know people hate to compare them, but I can't help but do it.
Yep.
But you don't hear these guitar licks that he's playing until you get him. It's just completely original. And at this point, most of these things that you hear him play are cliche. You know, they're old hat. But this guy invented this stuff out of just pulled it up out of the dirt.
Is he using a slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's using slide and fingers. So you put the slide
He
on.
has like 12 fingers per hand.
It's what it sounds like. Yeah, you put the slide on your pinky. I don't know if he's a pinky player, but you can slide around and then fret with your other three fingers. Karl, you pointed out earlier that blues it really plays pretty fast and loose with meter, and you can hear it here. If he needs to take an extra beat or two to fit in a lick, he just does it. So there's kind of we hear a little bit of the boom chuck rhythm it's so common in folk music, but then he plays over the line, over the bar to fit in a lick, and that's I think where we are first starting to hear that element.
Yeah, and then 37 years later, a bunch of limey kids find this stuff, and you end up with Eric Clapton and Cream play Crossroads Blues.
Yeah.
We've all heard this. Yeah. I suspect that a lot of people that are listening to this show have heard this song and didn't know that it's from Mississippi in 1920s.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The Crossroads, this is a little personal for me because so my dad grew up in Clarksdale, Mississippi. And the crossroads that Robert Johnson is singing about is the intersection of Highway 49 and 61 in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Incidentally, Clarksdale is a pretty rough town, has a lot of great history. It's a rough place, but if you ever go and visit, there's a Delta Blues Museum there, and the best pulled pork sandwich you'll ever have in your life is there at the Crossroads. Abe's Barbecue. Total dump, but the sandwich will change your life.
That's how you know it's going to be good.
Yeah, that's how you know. But Robert Johnson singing about the Crossroads. Well, there's a legend, of course. Supposedly, Robert Johnson got to play guitar like this because he made a deal with the devil at the Crossroads.
It's the only way he could learn that stuff.
That's right. So he supposedly, as the legend has it, he exchanged his soul to the devil in return for his guitar prowess. And he comes home, and then just this pops forth.
Yeah, because
I was listening to that thinking, if you were in a club or wherever he would have been playing, how would you hear all of the stuff that he's doing? Acoustically, it's Robert, you need an electric guitar.
Sure.
Yeah.
So he's got a technique that is predating the technology. So
Yeah.
he's developing what every electric guitar player in the world learns to do before there was such a thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. My dad told me that when he was a little kid, he would sometimes hear the musicians play out on the street. And 4th and Issaquena, apparently it was just on the black side of town, and that's where a lot of these blues musicians would gather and just play on the corner. And so I think it kind of grew out of a tradition, at least there in the Delta, is the music you played to relax after work and socialize a bit. And then only later, as technology allowed for it, did it become club music where you'd hear it in the honky tonks. And it's music you'd go drink and party to.
Let's listen to a little more Robert Johnson. Anything that we do with Robert Johnson just isn't enough, and it makes me feel bad, but what are you going to do, you know? Let's listen to Traveling Riverside Blues.
If your man get bursting on, won't you have your fun? If your man get bursting on, won't you have your fun? Let's come on back to Pride Point, mama, and Bell House all night long. I got women in Vicksburg, clean on into Tennessee. I got women in Vicksburg, clean on into Tennessee. But my Pride Point rider now hops all over me.
So what the hell is this guy doing? Why is this blues? What is this? You can hear it, but what is it?
Well, we've got the call and response format, right? He sings a line, but this time, instead of other people singing the response, is his guitar. He's responding to himself. We've got a loose 12-bar structure there with the chord changes. Now, he does, as we said, take liberties and play over the bar line as needed to play a fill. And I think we've got all the thematic and lyrical content that we associate with blues, singing about his women all over the South that he's got.
Yeah, flat 5, flat 3, flat 7, sliding into pitches, and it's swingy. He might add a beat when he needs to add an extra one for a little turnaround or something, but it swings. It swings pretty good.
Yep.
I love that he'll take the liberty with the meter and add a beat when he wants it. He's just a person of integrity. You know, it's like if I want to say something with this guitar or with my voice, I'm going to do it. I don't care what the quote unquote rules are. You know,
Yeah.
And he uses the slide. Like, who does this? This is, you know.
Well, I think it's a primordial rule. I think as I was listening to the playlist the last few days, you know, and getting on to Stevie Ray Vaughan and was it Joe Bonamassa, you know, towards the end, and Jeff Beck and everything, they're rule followers.
Yep.
And I love them. Well, I love Stevie Ray, but they're rule followers, and it's strict, and it's 12 bars, and they really hang on those blue notes like they're mother's milk. You know, it's like, I'm going to make the bluesiest thing I can. And but you go back to Robert Johnson, or you go back to some of these earlier singers, they don't follow the rules. They're not as hung up on hitting every single blue note they can.
Right.
So it's, you know, Led Zeppelin, when they go listen to Robert Johnson, they take Robert Johnson and make him bluesier. Which is, it's interesting. So
Which is dumb.
Like
How could he be?
Louis Armstrong in Dallas Blues doesn't sound, he doesn't sound so blue.
Yeah.
How can he
That's a
be
great
more
point.
bluesy than Robert Johnson? Like, the audacity. You know?
Well, and I think part of this is there's a big emphasis on the character of the bluesman himself.
Yep.
Right. When we talked about bluegrass, and I mean even like Texas swing, the focus is on the song itself, right, and the cultural association with the song. Because remember, a lot of those songs are about places, and the focus is less on the performer. Here, that's the opposite. The focus is on the performer. This is Robert Johnson, and these guys are making legends of themselves. They are, you know, we'll later hear, I think I put one on the playlist, T Model Ford. He's got a theme song. Well, if you go and dig into the catalog of a lot of these bluesmen, just about all of them have a theme song. So they announce themselves at their concerts. It's you know, it's self-aggrandizing. That's part of the mythologizing of these characters. And so it reinforces their individual legend, right? Their character when they play over the bar line, because they're not adhering to a tradition so much as they are making their own myth. Mm-hmm. So it's funny when Robert Johnson plays. How many times have you heard that little walk that he does on the turn? So when he's turning between, you know, when we said the 1, 4, 5.
Yep.
When he goes back to the 1, he does that little turn. Well, that's just as cliche as it gets nowadays. But all of those things were the vocabulary that he made up.
Yep, he made them all up. It's it's amazing. Like I said, like you just said, to our 2020 ear, it sounds like cliche. This was entirely new and fresh, and just like a
Well,
plant.
Shakespeare's full of cliches too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think Robert Johnson appropriated the 6-string flat top guitar, and then did really awesome things with it.
Yeah.
So, like you said, Karl, he's probably playing in house parties. You pay 25 cents and you come over to somebody's house, a rent party, right? You pay 25 cents. Robert Johnson's in there playing. Maybe you bring beer. Maybe there's dancing, whatever. He's playing house parties with rent parties with one guitar. Then we have the Great Depression. This is 1927 here, right? The Great Depression starts, the stock market crashes in 29, 2 years later. And by the mid-30s, the South is even poorer than it already was. There's a huge exodus from the South to primarily Chicago. But there are people that are moving from the South north for work to Detroit to work for Ford Motor Company and General Motors and the steel country to work for the steel companies. But something interesting happens in Chicago, and probably because Chess Records is there. We know more about it than we do about other blues music that was transmitted to the north, but it becomes electrified.
Yeah.
My favorite of these is Muddy Waters. A Telecaster guitar, a 5-watt amp turned up way too high. Not a good guitar player, but he just does all the right stuff. He just
another Clarksdale guy, by the way.
Yeah.
It's shocking how many of these folks are all from Mississippi, and a great many of them from Clarksdale in particular.
Supposedly Muddy Waters met Robert Johnson and even learned a song or two from him. It seems like I've heard that story. He's my favorite. You've heard he extends the cliche. So much of blues is cliche, right? There are these little turnarounds like you've talked about, these riffs, these Robert Johnson licks that we've heard. To become a masterful guitar blues player is to learn all of that cliche and then tie it together and maybe extend it. It's really hard to extend it at this point, but he adds to it. I'm Your Hoochie Coochie Man is one of the songs on this list here from Muddy Waters. King of the Electric Blues is the name of the album. I think that's right. That's a cliche now.
The gypsy woman told my mother before I was born, you got a boy child coming, gonna be a son of a gun. He gonna make pretty women's jump and shout. Then the world wanna know what this all about. But you know I'm here. Everybody knows I'm here. Way down that hoochie coochie man. Everybody knows I'm here. I got a black cat bone. I got a mojo too. I got the John the Conqueror. I'm gonna mess with you. I'm gonna make you girls leave me by my hand. Then the world will know that I'm that hoochie coochie man. But you know I'm here.
If You Never Even Call Me By My Name is the perfect country western song, this is the perfect blues song. It's got all the innuendo. He's the hoochie coochie man. It's got the premonition. The gypsy woman tells his mom that he's going to make all the pretty women's jump and shout. And then he's got all of his hoodoo voodoo charms. He's got his black cat bone, his mojo, and his John the Conqueror. It's just got all the stuff you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
And it just swings and grooves, and it's just awesome.
Well, and it's added some instrumentation that's typical now. You have the harmonica, the bass and the drums. It's like You turn the dial to blues, and it brings up that sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Notice also we've got extended solos happening now. So there's a vamp over the chord progression.
That's so good. We skipped a lot, and we'll go back and get some of it. But the spirituality of the Black South in this stuff is so fascinating and interesting to me. You know, black cats, they're not good luck, are they? You got your black cat bone. He's got his mojo. What people say all the time now, you lost your mojo. Well, that had significance.
Austin Powers lost his mojo.
He did.
Yeah. He had to get it back.
It's a charm bag, it had some stuff in there. They'd do some religious ceremony around that thing, and it would take on, it would have its own spirit. It would have to feed the thing, and you'd derive power from it. And if you lost it, that was a bad deal. It'd be like, I don't know, losing religion.
So if you actually like human beings, okay, which I think, believe it or not, I think all three of us do, even Scott Hammond.
I like them in the specific, but I have trouble with them in aggregate.
Yeah, but if you like people, you want to hear their stories, you want to understand their stories. And we did this, we did this way back in the Jimmy Rogers episode, trying to figure out why they're singing what they're singing. And, I'm thinking of Jimmy Rogers a lot on this episode. What is it? If your bread is burning, turn that bread around or whatever. Yeah. What does that mean? And you're trying to figure out what, he was also from Mississippi. You're trying to figure out what these people were talking about, getting their stories. Like, I love, I've been reading Mark Twain a bit recently, and he'll just preserve these little sayings. Like, I remember one, the only gold he had was in his character. There's this little perfect snippet of language out of culture of Missouri, and I want to know more. I want to know how people thought. And so if you go into the blues, and maybe you look up some of the weird lyrics that don't make much sense to you, and you learn what it meant to Robert Johnson in 1927, or what it meant to Muddy Waters, or Louis Armstrong, or what a jelly roll is, I think it's beautiful. Yeah. Honestly.
Well, and I've only seen Clarksdale in its modern incarnation. To me, growing up in a middle class area in North Texas, in DFW, which is a sprawling metropolis, it's shockingly poor. I can only imagine what it was like in when it was really the agricultural South. Still kind of is, but it's a different thing now. But the resilience of the human spirit in this music is amazing to me. The fact that not only are they writing tunes that are, it's like they're turning around their misfortune and their sorrow into something that's, I don't know, is it cathartic? Is it celebratory? But I think it's interesting that, not only are they doing this, they're mythologizing themselves, right? These bluesmen, they're having a lot of fun at the expense of their miseries. And there's something that's
a trick I want to learn.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
John the Conqueror he's a folk hero. He's Paul Bunyan. He's Pecos Bill. He's a folk hero for these people. So he was an African prince. This goes to making lemonade, Karl. I think he was an African prince in their folklore. He gets captured and sold as a slave. He comes to the United States, or comes to the Americas, and they never break his spirit. And he's just this trickster that's constantly playing tricks on his masters. And he's just indomitable, Supposedly, Brer Rabbit and the Uncle Remus stories is kind of based on John the Conqueror. So you see this tricks and stuff that Brer Rabbit uses, or those are based on some of those stories, apparently. So Muddy Waters has got his John the Conqueror root.
Yeah.
So supposedly, John the Conqueror, I think the story is he gets to go back. He goes back to Africa. He finds a way to go back to Africa, but he leaves his spirit in this root. So this indomitable, trickster is in this root, and so you can put that in your mojo bag. You can put that in your pocket, and you can have that with you. So you might be poor, and you might have had to hitchhike from Mississippi to Chicago to get a job in a meatpacking plant, a job you hate. so that your kids don't die, but you've got that with you all the time. I think that's pretty great. And then, of course, it gets a little weirder than that, and it helps you win dice games and stuff, and stuff like that
That's
too.
right.
But I love that idea. That's a good.
Yeah.
So supposedly, he gets one of the stories I read was the master says you've got to clear this 60 acres today, and then you got to plant it in corn by the end of the day, and you have to harvest it tomorrow. And he calls on these spirits, and they give him an enchanted axe, and he does it all. And the next day, he reaps it all, and then the devil finds out he could do it, and they're going to capture him, and he like takes on the form of an animal and like escapes. There's these stories of these enormous feats, and then coming out on top. I can get on board with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Herculean.
How is Joe Bonamassa, Boner? How is he going to tie in? How is he going to? How does a guy like that, John Mayer, how do they tap into that? They can't.
Yeah.
It's the Punch Brothers of this.
I knew you were going there. Yeah, John Mayer is from Connecticut.
Yeah, he's got a live album, and he says, "I'm going to play a blues now from I think he says from Bridgeport, Connecticut, home of the blues," and laughs on mic.
He's got a good sense of humor about it for sure. I want to talk a little bit more about the guitar playing. Just to kind of drive home the point that these guys were really developing the language of blues. Let's listen to a little Lightnin' Hopkins.
Yeah.
Here's a song called Mojo Hand. This is an old song that is electrified in this version. I want to listen up through the guitar break because I think it's a very interesting approach to the genre.
Okay.
Or to the form.
Lightnin' Hopkins, Mojo Hand.
I'm going to do that and get me a mojo hand. I'm going to do that and get me a mojo hand. I'm going to fix my woman so she can't have no other man. Cold ground was my bed last night. Rocks was my pillow too. Cold ground was my bed last night. Rocks was my pillow too. I woke up this morning, I was wondering what am I gonna do? I lay down thinking about me a mojo hand. I lay down thinking about me a mojo hand. I didn't want to fix my woman so she can't have no other man.
All right, he's made the
But don't
decision.
let your woman fix you like mine fix me. Don't let your woman, boy, fix you like mine fix me. She'll make a fool about her, about as a fool can be.
Killer. I love that.
Killer. Texas,
And
by the way, we're in Texas now. Texas blues is its own animal.
It is. Notice how he did not go straight for the blue note there and that run after that, that high thing. He has I don't even know what it was, but yeah, so he could just wails on that high string and then has a little descending line, but it is not there. He passes through a major third, I believe there. He's not going for the flat third. So but no rules, but
Man, that's tasty. That's 1960. It's still acoustic.
Yeah.
Tasty.
Yeah.
Lightnin' Hopkins, T-Bone Walker, Freddie King, Albert King.
I think the thing that
Texas.
I wanted to drive home on this podcast, and something that I didn't realize before I learned more about the blues, is that all these guys playing electric blues more or less came from that more primitive tradition. And, Muddy, B.B. King, guys who later on became more elegant players in the electric style, started with the Robert Johnson type blues form that we heard earlier.
Right.
Even though we don't have a lot of their music, because they never recorded anything until they made it to Chicago or Detroit or wherever.
Let's see. What's another style that's in the trunk of the tree here?
What I think B.B. King is worth mentioning here, because I think he gets a bad rap. I know you're not the biggest fan, Scott.
He's boring as hell.
Well,
he plays 5 notes in one position on guitar.
B.B. King. Well, here's the thing. B.B. King, I think "The Thrill Is Gone" is I don't know.
Yeah.
That's his biggest track, but I can't really get behind that much. But if you listen to some of his earlier electric work, he was probably the more elegant of the players. He followed chord changes. He had a little bit more refined picking style and vibrato. He did this album with an orchestra. I think is quite nice. It's from the late 50s. I picked the track "Sweet Thing" from this album, 1958, and this gives you a kind of idea of pushing the blues into more refined and elegant style.
This guy's in Memphis.
When I first met you, baby, honey, you were almost out of school. Yes, when I met you, baby, honey, you were just about ready to come out of school. You were real wild then, woman. Honey, but you are nobody's fool. I was so in love with you, baby, and tried to get you to love me too. I'm so in love with you.
So BB's a great vocalist, and BB can do more with 3 notes than anybody else. And that is not a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
And, tasty licks, 3 or 4 notes. BB's not playing rhythm guitar for you.
Right.
BB's not working up and down the neck. BB doesn't know all the chords like the guy in the Dire Straits song. But just real tasty.
Very nice vibrato.
Renowned for that crying vibrato.
I want to point out something about the singing style that's common to all of the ones that we've heard so far. You start high and you end low.
Right.
So if there's a shape to it, you go up maybe to the third, and then, but when you get to the end of the phrase, you're dropping it back down. So you'll hear it. That would be sort of the howl, I guess, in the blues.
Yeah, it's kind of like a wailing.
The declaration is up high in the range, and then the resolution is down low. You'll hear it every time.
Yeah,
you
listen to the very
it.
beginning of "I Can't Quit You Baby" by Willie Dixon.
Here we go.
Whoa, I can't quit you, baby, but I got to put you down a little while.
32 beats a minute.
Whoa, I can't quit you,
There you
darling.
go. The wail and the fin.
Ah, so good.
Another Zeppelin tune that we heard on the Zeppelin episode. Willie Dixon also wrote that Muddy Waters tune that we heard earlier, Hoochie Coochie Man.
Yeah. I want to try to get, gosh, we've been on here for 2.5 hours already, probably. I want to try to get some more chunks in here. We've talked a lot about guitar, blues drumming, blues percussion, we're probably not going to say a whole lot about that. It swings and grooves. At some point, it becomes dance music and beer joint music. I don't know what else you're going to say about that. We can talk a little bit about the walking bass and how they ride those flat threes and flat sevens and the walking bass. We can probably talk about that when we talk about Johnny B. Good, because you have to talk about Johnny B. Good. But one of the wonderful things about blues is the emergence of the harmonica, the harp. It's the perfect poor person instrument. You know, you can make a washtub bass and all kinds of homemade stuff, but you could go to the hardware store and for probably less than $1 buy a Hohner harmonica and get to work and play interesting music. Do we have any? Well, my favorite harmonica player was at Chess Records, and you were going to hear him on these Muddy Waters albums.
Little Walter.
Little Walter. We got a Little Walter song on here called Juke. Let's hear a little bit of Little Walter, because he defines the genre, just like Robert Johnson defines acoustic. You guys know all about it. You've heard it your whole life. This guy invented that almost entirely. He's probably playing a Hohner harmonica into a dynamic mic. He's holding the microphone right up against the harmonica inside cupped hands, playing through probably a Fender Champ or a Fender Deluxe amp. He's playing it, and it's turned up all the way. So he's getting some distortion here, just like your favorite guitar hero would, but it's distorted harmonica. And he's able to bend these pitches and do things with this that make it mimic the voice in such a wonderful way that, it's a whole new world here, I think. Yeah, and he's at Chess Records, so if you hear stuff from Chess in the 50s, you're going to hear a Little Walter play on all kinds of stuff. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just so... Who doesn't like that?
It's a great instrument. It's well suited for the blues because you can bend those notes, and it's...
And you could put it in your breast pocket.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You just need a couple.
You could put 12 of them in your vest.
One for every key.
Yeah,
it's great stuff. And I put a little at the very end of this playlist. I put a little bit of Blues Traveler on here because John Popper is one of the great modern harmonica masters. But yeah, I mean, he owes a huge debt, of course, to Little Walter.
Little Walter made that thing legitimate. Go listen to Blues Traveler. We don't have time I don't think to play it unless you want to, Trent. Say the word. Go listen to anything with Lee Oscar on it. Magic Dick. Great diatonic harmonica players. They're out there and a whole lot of fun. You want to get crazy? You can listen to some Toots Thielman play his chromatic harmonica. I want to play Professor Long here now, something entirely different. We've been talking about guitar. We just hit harmonica a little bit. You got Professor Long here in New Orleans. He's got a song called Tipitina that if you're from New Orleans and you play live, you've got to know this song. There's a bar down there not called Tipitina's, which I have set in. And this song is so much fun. This guy right here, he don't care about nothing. You talk about the rules, he does not care. It's amazing.
Tipitina, tra-la-la-la, whoa-la-la-la, tra-la-la.
So good.
Tipitina, oola-mala-walla-da, tra-ma.
You can kind of hear that Congo square sound a little bit in here.
Yeah.
Hey, Lou Bird, oh, Lou Bird. Hey,
heaven, baby, knows what you wanna do. Say, Luberto, oh, Luberto, girl, you tell me where you've been.
So it's got this real tight sort of, I don't know, calypso, zydeco derivative sound, kind of rhythm section here. The Purdy Shuffle comes from this. And it's real tight and it just swings. But when I said he doesn't care, no AFs, the vocals, what are these vocals? What is this?
It's like kind of a scat.
Does it mean something?
I love it. I don't know what it is, but he just does what he thinks he needs to do artistically in the moment. No rules. Makes his own rules.
Now,
love it.
If you listen to the piano playing, so the thing about the harmonica and the electric guitar and the guitar in general, which makes it appropriate for this kind of music, is it's easier to bend notes and to slide into things. On the piano, you can't do that. So if you listen to Professor Long here, he's doing some little tone clusters, he's doing some chromatic stuff in there. I think that's why that blues piano sounds like it does. Because you can only play the 12 notes that are on the scale. So if you want to play, I don't think the blues scale actually matches up to the 12 tones on the piano.
Right.
So you kind of have to fake it. You know, so you're going to do some of those really close dissonances when you play because you can't slide.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because in especially if you're playing slide guitar in the blues, pitch is all it's all a construct, right? So, but yeah, you can like, what is that note? I don't know, but that's a bluesy note
Somewhere in there.
It's rarely ever, and that's also kind of my thing that bugs me about a lot of the modern blues players, like Bonamassa. It's too good. It's too linear. Yep. It's just that doesn't really translate to me.
Too many notes.
I love Professor Long here. I love that song. There's some piano. It's got the glissandos, the weird clusters, like you say, Karl, to try to approximate, the kind of pitches they want to come out of that fixed string instrument. I think we probably ought to go listen to some. Do we have some stride piano on here? Well, we've got Fats Domino, and he's certainly blues influenced, and is a piano player, and is doing interesting things here on "Ain't That a Shame." If you don't know this song, I don't know
this
where
is what
you've
I
been.
would call
It's crazy.
This is really blues becomes rhythm and blues at this point. It's kind of its own style, but it comes up from that New Orleans sound. Their take on the blues for sure.
You made me cry when you said goodbye. Ain't that a shame? My tears feel like rain. Ain't that a shame? You're the one to blame. You broke my heart.
You would do the stroll to this if you were at a party.
Ain't that a shame?
Okay, you guys ever do the stroll?
Promenade?
No.
I don't know what the stroll is.
Yeah. Kind of a line dance. On Soul Train, they would all like line up and then would like dance down between the lines of dancers, towards the camera. That's kind of it, but that would have been a stroll. Great dance. You learn it so quick. Depending on where you are on the line, you're going to dance with a different girl every time. It's great. Yeah. Fantastic. It's the rhythm and blues equivalent to a square dance, maybe.
Right,
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, so we're hinting now at the fingers of blues that now reach into genres that are now part of just the American lexicon, right? Like R&B, rhythm and blues, early rock and roll, rockabilly. This stuff is country music. Gosh, it's all there. it's all there.
I was thinking, so we used to occasionally in this house watch some of the singing shows.
Oh, okay.
Like there's a whole bunch of singing talent shows on regular television now. Probably not going to watch them anymore. But whenever the singer comes out, the things that get the judges to say, wow, ooh, that's great. It's whenever they throw a little bit of a blues inflection in. This music is coterminous with American music. It's in all of it. It's what we expect singers to sing like. To have something of this style in their capabilities. If they don't, it sounds square.
Yeah, it has no soul. Like what is soul? What does that mean?
I don't know what it means, but it blues influenced, I think, is what it means.
Yeah. What do you want to hear next? We've skipped the Kings, Albert and Freddie. Blues?
Well, I thought, certainly those guys are, they are two of the Kings. No relation, by the way, but I think it might be interesting to listen to a little bit of R.L. Burnside. I think his best stuff, my favorite R.L. Burnside stuff, is actually on YouTube. You can go listen to the early 70s Alan Lomax recordings, which are not on an album that I'm aware of. You have to go watch the video. It's not on Spotify. This is a performance of him playing Jumper on the Line. And I mean, literally, the dude gets off working out in the fields, changes his shirt, gets a beer, sits down and plugs in his guitar, and Alan Lomax is there recording him on his front porch. You can hear his kids crying in the background.
He's playing the worst guitar.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the world,
I mean, it's
too.
a handmade guitar, crappy little amp. But this is interesting because RL, again, one of those guys that was around forever, but never got recorded except for a couple of Alan Lomax recordings in the 70s and 80s. And then in the 90s, he gets discovered and actually gets a little bit of notoriety. The guy was in his 70s at that point, but had been playing in juke joints, since he was a teenager. But this is a different style of blues. What we heard earlier was more or less Delta blues. And he's from North Mississippi, near Oxford. So this is kind of the Old Miss, closer to Memphis area, the hill country of Mississippi. And it has a distinctly different style. This is really very club-oriented, juke joint-oriented, dancey blues. It's very interesting to me. I love it.
I love it. More people need to know about R.L. Burnside. Let's go here. My Jumper Hanging on the Line.
It's all finger style, too, no pick.
This is one that I wrote myself. See my jumper hanging on the line. See my jumper, Lord, hanging out on the line.
I don't know how he does that chunking sound while he's playing the other stuff.
It's hypnotic.
But there's no 12-bar structure on this.
Nobody has something on my mind.
To me, this is more bluegrassy. That kind of claw hammer.
Yeah, when he mutes to get that rhythm sound, he's muting with his left hand, his fret hand. Most of the time when people play rhythm and get that chuck, they're muting with their right. Really interesting.
So I don't know if RL ends up being as influential as these other folks who we mentioned. I have no idea.
It's too late.
But this guy was essentially unknown until the 90s. It's kind of interesting. If you want to do a little bit more homework, you can go and look up Fat Possum Records. There's a record label based out of Mississippi that went and produced records with some of these old bluesmen that had been undiscovered. And so this was R.L. Burnside. I think his first album with them was, it's got that Tojo Told Hitler story that he tells. It's called Ass Pocket of Whiskey. And that's the first album he did. And this was with the John Spencer Blues Explosion, which was a 90s band that was signed to Fat Possum Records. But they kind of made they were kind of like a modern Alan Lomax going around and trying to capture some of these old bluesmen. Another was Junior Kimbrough from the same area, a very hypnotic dance style of blues. Yeah, I don't know. To me, this has it's more akin to the country music we've heard than it is to the New Orleans sound or the Delta blues sound.
I was interested in this clearly because it is so much different. And I read about Burnside and some interviews, and he said that he listened to Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and stuff, but he would go to fife and drum picnics. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I went and found a little bit of it. This is a song called Every Time I Come Around by the Georgia Fife and Drum Band, but you can hear some of the same kind of rhythmic stylings in that you hear in the Arlo Burnside. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, if it hadn't been for a couple of recordists, how would we know of any of this stuff? You know, how many other RLs were out there that we just, didn't hear?
No, if it's not recorded, it didn't exist. Yeah, I'm with you, Scott. I've already deuced on GarageBand, but hardly anyone plays any music. Okay, this is a plea to you out there in podcast land, dear listener. Pick an instrument. And I got some suggestions, but pick an instrument. Play something.
What are your suggestions?
Well, if you're not much of a musician, ukulele is pretty easy. It's easy on the hands. It's nylon strings. It's small. You can get a decent one for $30. You can strum along and play some music. Everybody plays guitar. Guitars are all over the place. It's not that hard to get a decent sound on a guitar. The guy that owns my gym that I train people at, he's I don't know if he's 40 yet. He's still a kid, but he's learning piano. Now, are you going to get to play Chopin? Probably not if you're starting later in life, but you can play something. You could learn like a little blues left hand thing and then play blue notes with your right hand and spend a couple hours just making stuff up.
You can play Fats Domino.
Sure.
You can play that stuff, the boogie. Yeah, so a friend of mine with a lot of small children, he was like, Trent, here's the secret, the small kids. He's like, stay away from the chromatic instruments.
Right.
It's like diatonic is your friend. I was going to add, just pick up a harmonica. It's cheap. I've got this, I'm not a harmonica player, but I've got this Hohner Marine Band harmonica. And then it's fun because you can't hit a wrong note. If you just put on any folk music in the key of C, you sound great. Just
there are no wrong notes in that thing.
There's no wrong notes. And then if you can, I'm no good, but I learned how to like bend a note. That's kind of fun. So now I can do the.
Is that the Sesame Street thing? That was Toots Thielman, by the way, on Sesame Street.
Yep.
But I remember I went to the beach one time, and we actually have beaches up here in Lake Michigan. It's never warm. But we went up to, I think, Zion, Illinois, and there was a guy sitting in his car. He's just sitting there enjoying the weather, and he had this old I don't think he ever changed the strings, electric guitar, and he's just sitting there playing some blues, and he let me have the guitar, and I played a little bit, and then he played a little bit. You know, I thought that was real cool. I thought we had an exchange of music just out in the wild.
Out in the wild.
But we don't do that now. We don't even do it in captivity. I mean, your music is all canned. It's all pre-done. It's all what somebody else did. All of the music in your house is something somebody else is performing. I think that's not great. Heck, get yourself, what are they called? What's it, Trent, you would know, that little box that you play drums on, that you sit on?
Oh, a cajon?
Yeah, I got one that I made. I got a kit and made it. I think it was $40. I made one.
Yeah.
So you can sit on it and you can just beat out rhythms.
Yeah, or like a hand drum, like a djembe, anything like that.
No.
Yeah, it's great. You just sit there and
rub patchouli all over yourself.
Go do it. We need the 21st century music. Where's it going to come from?
Karl, you mentioned eefing, and we've talked about it on the show. I think we have to play some eefing.
I was hoping you would do some eefing.
Yeah, so you're talking about instruments. You don't even have to have an instrument.
You could sing.
You can sing. We've got beatbox, right? You've heard of beatbox.
Yeah, beatbox. More people can sing than think they can sing.
And we had this. Eefing.
Yep.
Hillbilly beatbox.
That's
Hee-haw.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can sing, and in fact, if you look at the evolution of hip hop, I think you can draw a lot of lines all the way back to the blues. For the most part, a lot of the melodic and harmonic elements of blues come out from hip hop, and the percussion is emphasized.
Yeah.
But you think about the themes, right? Sort of mythologizing yourself, right? Becoming a character that you step into when you rap. Boasting about sexual prowess,
swordsman,
money, right? Like some of the classic sort of hip hop themes. I think a lot of it comes from the blues, right? This is where this kind of stuff started. And in fact, even if you look at the way that people sing, people perform a rap. It wasn't long before the first rappers started saying, "Hey, it'd be interesting. What if we rapped over the bar line? What if we rhymed in the middle of the bar rather than the end of every bar?" Right? And all of a sudden, you see the same thing, right? The Robert Johnson thing. We're just playing over the bar to whatever you need. See that in hip hop now.
We can't do this without playing some Chuck Berry. We'll listen to Johnny B. Good. Everybody knows it, but we're going to play it anyway because something interesting about Johnny B. Good. God, that's great.
Deep down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans, way back up in the woods among the evergreens, there stood a log cabin made of earth and wood, where lived a country boy named Johnny B. Good, who never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could play a guitar just like a ringing a bell. Go, go! Go, Johnny.
Now, my friend Trent says that Elvis was a concatenation of blues and country music, and it was a white guy that sounded black enough that it could sell and go mainstream. And then he says Chuck Berry is the opposite of that. He was a black guy that sounded white enough and could combine country music sensibilities with blues and make rock and roll. And I think you're right about that. He talks about being born in a log cabin there, and this song is about him. Actually, I think he was born on Good Street, and then he sings about coming to town, right, and then making good, and talks about being a celebrity. So it's still got that blues stuff in it.
Yeah.
And he's a guitar hero, and this is the beginning of the rock and roll guitar hero, or one of the beginnings of it. It's so good.
Well, the whole guitar hero thing. I mean, you're talking about the blues singers making their own myth. Well, that's what a guitar hero is, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, Chuck, I think if you had to pick one guy to represent the birth of rock and roll, I think you would have to say Chuck Berry. Now, there's plenty of guys who were doing rock and roll before that. It's kind of like who invented calculus,
Right.
Except there's probably like 5 or 6 different guys you could maybe say is the first rock and roll song. But Chuck Berry was like, he's the Robert Johnson of rock and roll. I mean, it was all there. And, it's kind of the beginning and the end of it. But yeah, I think that's what's interesting. And this is a whole nother episode. But yeah, I think Chuck Berry is the culmination of the R&B, the guitar stylings, the blues themes. Again, lots of innuendos.
Mm-hmm.
My Dingling. He had a song called My Dingling. I love that.
Yeah.
But you've got that mixed with the, I think, very, very country and very, very Tennessee vocal stylings where he really enunciates everywhere. Listen to the way he sings. It's not, I'm going to Louisiana,
No.
Mojo Ham, right? It is very clearly enunciated. Maybelline, why can't you be true?
Karl,
I mean,
have you heard My Ding-a-ling?
Of course.
Okay. I was just checking. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
So anyway, I get all in a twist about Chuck Berry. He's so important, but
Yeah, and Chess Records again. Chess is the best stuff, I think. Guitar Hero, and then, of course, so I don't know. When's Johnny Be Good? 55, 56, 1958. So we got Red House on here by Jimi Hendrix. I mean, if there's a Guitar Hero, it's him, right? Maybe more than Chuck Berry if you say, what's a Guitar Hero. This was written. Jimmy wrote this and recorded this in 66. So this is 8 years after Johnny Be Good.
Insane.
God, that Fender guitar sounds so good.
got that tape delay on it.
Yeah, so good. Seventh by 7. Call and response. Jimi Hendrix is a blues man. He was at Woodstock and he had the crazy clothes and all that stuff. But man, he's a blues man. He's got Hey Joe. He's going to shoot his old lady down. He's got Trouble here in the Red House over yonder. It's the same stuff and really perfect. The Purple Haze and all that garbage overshadows how excellent he was. I think. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, he played with the was it the Isley Brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tina Turner. He played all the Chitlin circuit or whatever,
Yeah. So he was well steeped in rhythm and blues, and of course, earlier blues by extension.
So you got this guy in 66, and you have these geeks doing this Alfred E. Newman blues.
Stand before you with my heart
Just
in my hand.
awful.
I do not like the Rolling Stones. If we do a Rolling Stones episode, it's just going to be me saying how much they suck.
Yeah.
Keith Richards is a wonderful rock and roll rhythm guitar player.
Sure.
But that's the end of it.
The sum is not greater than the parts in that case. Eric Clapton is the same way for me. I'm sorry, guys.
Eric Clapton, no.
I just can't get behind it.
He didn't die. As a man in his 40s and 50s and 60s, he looks good. He's got the good singing voice. He's smart, and he's become the historian and kind of the grand old man of this, but he's not that great. I saw, Eddie Van Halen died. We keep talking about him, and I saw an interview where somebody said, "Well, who are you influenced by? Were you influenced by Eric Clapton?" And I wish I had found. I should have bookmarked this. And he said, "Well, the Cream stuff," but he said it was really the rest of the band. You could tell that Eric was just barely hanging on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff Beck, more Guitar Hero stuff. Let Me Love You. Still real square. That's Let Me Love You from his album Truth. But I'm doing all of this real fast just so I can get to Stevie Ray Vaughan, Pride and Joy.
Very Jimi Hendrix influenced
Yep.
tone, but a Texas beat.
Yeah, the Texas shuffle, the drums with the shovel.
Where you've heard about love and giving sight to the blind. My baby loving cause the sun to shine.
How legit is this guy? That's not a rhetorical question. Like literally, I think the authenticity thing counts. I kind of don't like myself about bringing that up in the bluegrass thing, about bringing that up here. He's certainly more authentic and more quote unquote bluesy, whatever that means, than John Mayer,
Yeah.
who can make a guitar sound every bit as good as this. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I think Stevie, he reinvigorated interest in the blues, but I think what's important is that he also, really ZZ Top did this way before him, but he also brought the Texas blues back into popularity, which is interesting because it's a whole nother beast. That shuffle beat is very unique. We don't really hear that quite as much in the southern form, the deep southern forms of the blues. It's kind of there when we get to Chicago, but it's not the same thing. It's not this upbeat, fast, pounding rhythm. If anything, the only similarity there is maybe in the later R.L. Burnside stuff that's electrified. But it's a unique kind of beast, and I appreciate Stevie for bringing interest back to that style.
Yeah, sounds so good. But that Texas blues, I love that stuff.
Oh, it's great stuff. You got to watch, if you want to watch, he did a performance at the Austin City Limits TV show. It's fantastic. You can look that up on YouTube. A fiery performer.
Yep.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I remember I was in world history class when I was in the 10th grade. No, I lied. My junior year when I got news that he had died in that helicopter crash. And when I found out, he was touring with Eric Clapton at that time. And the news that I heard at that time was that Stevie Ray Vaughan and members of Eric Clapton's band had died, and no one at that moment was sure if Eric Clapton was on the plane or on the helicopter or not. Mm. And I absolutely did not care. It was about Stevie Ray. And that's a horrible tragedy. He had just, he'd been a heroin addict and had struggled with substances and alcohol and had shaken that and was on his way to being one of the greatest of all times, if he isn't already, and then that happened. It's awful. There are 100 names that we haven't mentioned, and 100 aspects or 10,000 aspects of this art form that we haven't mentioned. But we're 2 hours and 11 minutes in, and I don't know what else to do, but maybe just cut its throat and pull the plug on this, and just know that it was not exhaustive.
No, American music is the blues. A lot of it's the blues. I mean, even if you're singing Cole Porter, you're going to sing it like a blues singer sings it. That's what I meant when I say it's coterminous or ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting if we think back to the jazz albums that we've talked about in the past. Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. The bop stuff, Blakey, and there was a blues tune or two in there. It's even prevalent in these forms of jazz. I mean, it's kind of is the building blocks of jazz, or the foundational vocabulary of jazz as well.
Rhapsody in Blue.
Rhapsody in Blue.
Which is not a blues.
Flat 3, flat 5, flat 7, all over the place, bending pitches, syncopation. This is a New York City Jew taking these wonderful things that he had heard and making something new out of it. And it's wonderful. It really is. It's become a cliche, but god damn, it's good.
I was thinking about what we were going to do next, or at some point in the future, and I thought Gershwin needs to be in there.
Yeah, let's do that. American in Paris and Rhapsody in Blue, just both of them just tear me up. And,
well, I mean, we've talked the whole day about the Caribbean slave trade, Mississippi influence on American music. There's another huge influence, which, frankly, it's cantors from the temples and synagogues in New York City.
I thought you were going to say klezmer, but I'll buy that.
But it's Irving Berlin and George Gershwin and that stuff, which you mix in with the other stuff that's there, and you get this wonderful American stew of music that we have. It's the best music in the world.
Yeah.
Well, if we do a Gershwin show, you're in charge of that one, Karl.
Oh, heck. How many tracks do you want on the Spotify playlist?
47.
100?
Yeah, it's funny watching our different styles of now that we're building these playlists. To me, it's kind of like, I feel like you've got to know where it came from, and you got to have some of it, and you got to know where it's going. But hopefully they're all things, in Spotify, you can do a right click on any of these songs and go to artist, go to album, go to song radio. Any of those are fun. You can go and listen to more of that person or more stuff like it. And I hope that these are all jumping off points for a bigger exploration of the genre.
Let's see here. The next show that we're recording, actually, I was just looking here, guys, we've already committed to this. I'm kind of excited. It's oh my God, I'm losing my mind. It's the Charlie Brown.
Giraldi, Charlie Brown Christmas.
Right.
The only Christmas album you need.
Yep.
No, maybe you need Bing Crosby.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to listen to A Charlie Brown Christmas by the Vince Guaraldi Trio, 1965. It's 44 minutes of perfect Christmas music, and that one will be the next show that we send out.
We're just going to be a blabbering mess. Listen to that.
Oh, God.
I don't know if I make it through a whole podcast.
Greensleeves just... It's unbelievable.
I think we need that album this Christmas more than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that thing, I'm just... And then Apple bought all the rights to all of the Charlie Brown holiday specials, and you won't see them on CBS this season.
Nope.
You won't see The Great Pumpkin. You're not going to see a Charlie Brown Christmas. You're not going to see the Thanksgiving special, the Easter special, because Apple bought those. I know that people get to own things, that we have this such thing as intellectual property. I understand that. But as a guy who puts out hours and hours of stuff for people to listen to for free, the idea that a 50-year-old American tradition of watching these on CBS can just be changed because someone else exchanged some monies. I don't know what to do with that. I think it was CBS that owned those. Whoever it was, whichever of the three major networks owned it, they have every right under our system to sell that to whoever will give them the price that they ask. And I get it, but in doing that, the nation's a little different, and I can't help but be made a little sad by all that.
Well, there's some old technology. You might still be able to find it. It's called a DVD. and you might be able to find some copies of these things and grab them up for yourself. I'd encourage that. Get as much of your media as you can in physical form.
Yeah.
Newsflash. Charities tell me that PBS has made a deal with Apple and should be showing them. We need maybe confirmation on that, but I hope that's true.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's we'll do some homework between now and then, and hope that's the case. I know that we bought the Christmas special, at least, maybe Great Pumpkin as well, on Amazon. Maybe we bought a digital form a few years ago, so there might be some of those floating around as well. But yeah, it's important stuff. I think it's because it goes back to what I said in the last episode. I think Charlie Brown really cares about the sanctity of these holidays, and it has the spirit of togetherness and community and, all the things that make us stronger and better as people at its heart. And that's what it's really about. It's not about Black Friday.
What?
It's not about that $200 4K TV special at Best Buy.
Well, we'll talk about that thing at length on our next show, Charlie Brown Christmas. And by the way, that one is going to be, I don't know what you call it. We're going to simulcast. I don't know.
Cross-posted.
Yeah, our friends at the Barbell Logic podcast will be playing our Music and Ideas episode on A Charlie Brown Christmas on their channel as the Christmas show. I was the host of that show for, 300 and something episodes or something like that, and I did a Christmas show about jazz every year while I was on there, and so there'll be more of that. So you guys that enjoy Barbell Logic, you'll see us there, and even if you don't listen to Barbell Logic, maybe you could try it out, and we will welcome those folks to our channel. And, the gnashing of teeth when I'm back on there, there are a bunch of people on that listen to that show that hate my guts. And when they hear me on there again, I'm just going to get larger. I'll probably get a squat.
There's
VR
a bunch
from
of
it.
people who enjoyed you very much on that podcast.
Why, thank you.
Well, yeah, maybe you need to make a trip on down to Louisiana, get you a Mojo hand.
I don't need one. I'll just thrive off of their hatred and dislike.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's the Music and Ideas show. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/music and join up to get our newsletter and some discount codes and our playlists. And we'll try to make that worth your while. Please send this show to a friend. Please know that the Christmas show is coming up. Maybe you and the family. I'll keep that one utterly PG. And you and the family can listen to us talk about A Charlie Brown Christmas. If you've got kids under 15 years old, they may not really know this album because the viewership of the three major networks has gone down. And this is something they should know. So we'll make that one ready for them. And leave us a review. It's a big help. Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you go, leave us a review. That's a great big help. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you the week before Christmas. Thanks.